Hi, it's Alison from Ancestral Kitchen. I am here today with a bowl of fermented oatmeal to talk to you about why you would want to make fermented oats and show you exactly how to do it. So I think there are 4 reasons why you would want to make fermented oats. The first one is that they taste great. They are so tangy and zingy. So many people who've made fermented oats using my method come back to me and say they can't go back to normal oatmeal. Secondly, the soaking in the fermentation process softens and hydrates the oat grain. Thirdly, adding a live starter in introduces yeasts and bacteria which break down the harder to digest parts of the oat, making it easier for you to digest. And then fourthly, in the process you can also neutralise phytic acid, which is a compound present in all grains which can stop you absorbing minerals. I've done a special video specifically on oats and phytic acid, and I will put a link to that below. So let's look at what you need to ferment your oats. So first of all, you need some oats. These are rolled oats. I've got about 100 grams here, which you can see is 1 cup. That will do 2 leanish portions. You could also use steel cut oats or oatmeal, which is called Scottish oats in the US. Then you need a live starter. Here I've got my sourdough starter, which is made of rye grain. You could also use other starters like we've got here apple cider vinegar, and this one is milk kefir. Yogurt or sauerkraut juice are other examples, as long as they've got live bacteria in, so they have not been pasteurised. Then if you want to optimise phytic acid reduction in your oats, you need some freshly ground phytase rich flour. This is rye flour that I have just ground in my Mockmill here, and that is high in phytase because it's fresh. You could also use buckwheat flour if you want to be gluten free. Then you're going to need some water. Ideally that would be unchlorinated, a bowl and something to cover the bowl with. So let me talk you through how to make fermented oats. So the first thing you do is measure out your oats. As I said, I've got 100 grams here, so this will do 2 lean portions. Usually I'd use about 60 grams per person. Put them into the bowl and then pour over ample water. Ideally this would be unchlorinated because chlorine inhibits fermentation. So as you can see, I'm putting a lot of water in there. And then you want to add in your live starter. I am using sourdough starter. Here I've got about 20 grams. I'm going to put that in. And then if you want to optimise phytic acid reduction, you can also add in your freshly ground phytase rich flour. Here I'm using rye grain that I've just ground. That all goes in. And then you're just going to mix it well. My sourdough starter is quite thick, as you saw. I maintain a thick sourdough starter. And so I'm just kind of breaking that up in the bowl here so it goes throughout the oats. When this is mixed in, I'm going to cover it and then I'm just going to leave it to ferment. Now, how long you leave your fermenting oats will depend on the ambient temperature of your home and how sour you like your oats. My house is relatively cold and I like my oats quite sour. So I usually mix these up in the evening and then leave them on the counter to ferment for my morning oatmeal. If your house is warm, then they will ferment more quickly. If your house is colder, or if you put them in the fridge, they will ferment more slowly. The longer you leave them, the more they will ferment. Sometimes I've left them 24 to 48 hours on the counter. That's absolutely fine. If you left these oats out overnight and then in the morning you don't have time to cook them up, you can put them in the fridge. If you have too many that you can't use, you can also put the leftovers in the fridge. In the fridge, the fermentation will really slow down. I've left these fermenting oats in the fridge for a week before and they've been fine. You can also, if you have leftover, put them in the fridge and use those as a starter for your next batch. So that's all mixed in. I'm just going to put a cover on them and then leave them here to ferment. So I'm going to show you now how to cook up your fermented oats. Here are my oats that have been fermenting overnight. They have separated a little bit. When I first came back to them, some of the oats were at the top. They smell creamy, but they also smell a bit like my sourdough starter. So I'm going to just pour the entire contents of the fermenting, the water and the oats, and obviously my live starter and my phytase rich flour is in there, into my saucepan. and then put on the heat. And then I'm just going to stir them gently, just like you would normal porridge. So remember, there's no need to drain your oats. The phytic acid in them has been neutralised. There's nothing in that soaking water that you can't eat. And what you'll notice is the soaking water actually has lots of little particles of oat in it. So it's delicious, don't throw it away. You can add more liquid to this just like you would normal oatmeal. You can put in milk or a plant beverage to top it up if you wish. And you're just cooking it like normal oatmeal. So while these are gently heating, I wanted to talk about the question that I get a lot, which is, but don't you lose all of the goodness by cooking up your fermented oats? And the answer is no, you do not lose all of the goodness by cooking up your oats. Yes, the live probiotics have gone, but they will have done amazing work pre-digesting your grains and doing the best they can to neutralise the phytic acid. Scientists are really only at the beginning of discovering the good that the products of cooked fermented food can give us, specifically paraprobiotics and postbiotics. And cultures have been eating cooked fermented food for generations, as well as live fermented food, raw. So my advice in this situation is just to have variety in your diet. You know, have your raw fermented foods like sauerkraut, but also don't be scared of cooking up some of your fermented foods. So let's talk about how to eat fermented oats. And really you can eat them in any way you'd eat normal oatmeal. The Scottish used to make their porridge with salt whilst they were cooking it up, and then they would have a spoonful of their porridge and they would have a separate bowl on the side with cream or milk, and they would dip each spoonful into the cream or milk. So that's kind of the authentic way. We are more used to sweet topping, so feel free to top away with fruits, nuts and really good honey if you can get it. I like my porridge savoury. Miso and peanut butter are both together in porridge are really, really good. I also sometimes have ground linseed with, because I lived in Italy for 10 years, some olive oil and mix that in. For extra protein on days where I feel like I need that, I sometimes stir an egg in just before I serve my porridge, so that cooks really lightly. And really simple is good too, so just with butter or cream. So let's talk about what else you can do with your fermented oats. Remember that I said earlier, if you are not ready to cook these up in the morning, you can pop them in the fridge. The fermentation will slow right down and then you can have them for breakfast the next morning. They will last 3 to 4 days in the fridge, no problem at all. If you don't fancy oatmeal or porridge, you can make a delicious fermented oat bake with these oats, and I will pop a recipe below for you. If you've got leftover cooked fermented oats in the fridge, you can take them out and heat them up with extra liquid and have them for supper or for breakfast the next day. So you can make twice the amount and then you've got breakfast for the next day. You can also use this cold in a bread. I have a lovely recipe for a spelt sourdough with leftover porridge in, and I will again pop that below for you. There are a myriad of other ways you can use this in the kitchen, and one of my other favourite ways is to pop it in soup. So instead of using dairy, normal cream, to make a soup creamy, you can put leftover fermented oats in your soup and whiz it up. Tastes delicious. I have a comprehensive post on how to make fermented oats, which has a huge FAQ bit at the end of it, and I will again pop that below the video for you. Do also check out my website, which is ancestralkitchen.com. There are loads of oat recipes and really fascinating oat stories on that for you. And I have a podcast too called Ancestral Kitchen Podcast, which you can find on your app or on the podcast website, which is ancestralkitchenpodcast.com. So if you do make fermented oats and follow my recipe, please do comment below and let me know how much you love them.